Today's news from Korea. The Yoon Suk-yeol administration began in earnest on pension reform, a national task. After the Ministry of Health and Welfare, the ministry in charge of pensions, recently established the National Pension Financial Estimation Committee for Financial Calculations, the Ministry of Strategy and Finance, the Financial Authority, created a Department of Pension Health and Economy using the discretion of the minister. The reason why the Ministry of Strategy and Finance created a new pension organization despite concerns about clashes between ministries is that the sharp increase in pension-related spending increases the burden of mandatory expenditure on the national budget. The mandatory expenditure, which already accounts for more than half of the blood tax, is expected to increase further in the future. It is pointed out that the government's discretionary spending capacity and policy driving force may weaken. According to the government on the 15th, the Ministry of Strategy and Finance has placed working-level personnel in the Pension Health and Economy Division, which was recently established as an autonomous organization within the ministry, and started full-fledged work. Since the appointment of the manager of the department in charge has not yet been decided, the head of the Welfare Economy Department in the Economic Restructuring Bureau is temporarily serving as the head of the Pension Health Economy Department. An official from the Ministry of Strategy and Finance said, the manager in charge will be decided between September and October. The establishment of the Department of Pension Health and Economy of the Ministry of Strategy and Finance is the first case of using the ministerial self-organization system introduced by the Yoon Suk-yeol administration. The Ministerial Autonomous Organization System is a system that allows each ministry to create and operate an organization necessary to respond to key issues at the minister's discretion. The maximum operating period is 6 months, an extension is possible only once. The Department of Pension Health and Economy will be in charge of research and analysis on the economic and financial impacts of the pension system and consultation and adjustment of pension-related policies. In the past, the Ministry of Strategy and Finance has dealt with pension-related affairs through the Welfare and Economy Division. Nevertheless, this time, even the ministerial self-organization system was mobilized to create a separate Pension Health and Economy Division. It can be interpreted that the current government's will for pension reform is that strong. President Yoon selected the pension as one of the 3 major reform tasks along with labor and education, and included pension reform in major national tasks. Experts say that just by looking at the state of the national pension, a representative public pension, you can understand why the government is betting on pension reform. According to the Ministry of Strategy and Finance, the total amount of pension benefits paid to national pension subscribers this year is 30.608 trillion won. This year is the first time that the national pension benefit has exceeded 30 trillion won. In 2005, it stood at 3.584 trillion won, a tenfold increase in just 17 years. The biggest factor behind the acceleration of national pension spending is the aging of the population. According to the National Pension Research Institute, the number of national pension recipients from 1.65 million in 2005 exceeded 4 million in 2016, and soared to 5.39 million in 2020, 4 years later. The number crossed the 6 million mark in May of this year. According to the National Assembly Budget Office, the number of national pension recipients is expected to increase to 8.74 million in 2030 and 12.9 million in 2040. The rapid increase in pension beneficiaries is associated with a shorter period of depletion of the National Pension Fund. The National Pension Fund is expected to grow to 1,027.7 trillion won in 2030 and then gradually bottom out. In the fourth fiscal projection conducted in 2018, the National Pension Fund was expected to start running deficit in 2042 and to be exhausted in 2057. However, in 2020, the National Assembly Budget Office has moved up the timeline due to a deficit in 2039 and exhaustion in 2055. It is pointed out that the contents of the Pension Health Economy Division of the Ministry of Strategy and Finance will overlap with the Ministry of Health and Welfare, the department in charge of pensions. The Ministry of Strategy and Finance is also wary of clashes with the Ministry of Welfare. However, since the depletion of pensions inevitably leads to an increase in mandatory expenditures in the national budget, the Ministry of Finance, the fiscal authority, is of the view that the Ministry of Finance should actively engage in related tasks. According to the 2022-2026 National Fiscal Management Plan announced by the Ministry of Strategy and Finance on the 5th of this month, 53.5% of Korea's total expenditure of 639 trillion won next year, or 341.8 trillion won, is mandatory. Mandatory expenditure is a budget in which the obligation to pay the 4 major public pensions of the national pension, public officials pension, teacher pension, and military pension, as well as health insurance, local subsidy tax, and local education financial subsidy is specified by law. The government cannot tamper with compulsory expenditure. The problem is that the proportion of mandatory expenditures is increasing due to pension expenditures and the like. The proportion of mandatory expenditure will increase from 53.5% in 2023 to 54.0% in 2024, 54.7% in 2025, and 55.6% in 2026. If the current trend of declining population and declining growth rate continues, there is even an observation that mandatory expenditure will reach 1,297.9 trillion won, 78.8% of the total expenditure of 1,648 trillion won in 2060. A high-ranking government official said, if the proportion of mandatory spending increases too much, the government's driving force for policy through discretionary spending will inevitably weaken that much, he said. In March 2018, former Armed Forces Security Commander Lee Sok-gu, currently serving as the ambassador to the United Arab Emirates, reported a second-class secret martial law document to then Minister of National Defense Song Young-moo and did not return the document to the Secret Document Management Office. The investigation TF claimed on the 14th. Former Defense Minister Song asked for an unofficial opinion from Choi Jae-hyung, then Chief of Audit and Inspection Service, on this confidential document, and at a meeting with the heads of departments in charge, he said, I said there was no problem with the document, but after that, I signed a confirmation of the fact that I had never said such a thing to the heads of departments in charge. There were also allegations of doing so. On the 14th, the People's Strength TF filed a complaint against 3 people, including former Defense Minister Song, former commander of the National Defense Security Service, and Lim Tae-hoon, director of the Military Human Rights Center, a private organization. The head of the People's Power Investigation Task Force said, former Defense Minister Song asserted that he played a role in dismantling the security guard by taking advantage of the martial law document case and the suspicions of inspections related to the sinking of the private passenger ship Swol. The so-called martial law document of the Armed Forces Security Command is a confidential document prepared in case the pros and cons of impeachment clash over the impeachment of the president in March 2017. In fact, such a worst-case scenario did not occur, and the document was closed at the discretion of the then Minister of Defense. However, after the regime change, this document was suddenly leaked to the outside and misinterpreted, which has led to suspicions that it was fabricated and announced as if the military was trying to cause a security coup against the people. An official from the People's Power Investigation TF said, the problem was how the confidential documents were leaked at the time, but the former Defense Minister Song, who was informed of the documents, or the former commander of the National Defense Security Service, who did not return the documents, contacted the Democratic Party through the Minister of National Defense Policy Aid or the Blue House, etc. He claimed that the documents were leaked to Rep. Lee Jae-hye and the director of the Military Rights Center, a general private organization, and it appears to have been exposed. According to the complaints, the former commander of the Armed Forces Security Service received 2 copies of a martial law document that was written and terminated during the Park Geun-Hye administration at the Secret Documents Management Office on March 16, 2018 while he was in office. It is known that the commander of the Armed Forces Security Service did not return any other copies other than the documents submitted to former Defense Minister Song during the reporting process. The commander of the Armed Forces Security Service said, when the person in charge of confidential documents asked why he didn't return it, it is known that he replied, I destroyed it on my own. In the midst of this, former Security Commander Cho Hyun-chun, who was in charge at the time of writing the martial law document, issued a statement from the United States where he was staying, saying, I will voluntarily return to Korea to investigate the truth of the martial law document and actively cooperate with the prosecution's investigation. It was confirmed on the 14th that the military authorities established a task force for the establishment of the Strategic Command under the direction of Defense Minister Lee Jong-sop in mid-July. The establishment of the Strategic Military Command is a core project promoted by the Yoon Suk-yeol government to effectively respond to the North Korean nuclear and missile threat. The Strategic Military Command is being established under the goal of maximizing defense and attack power against North Korea by gathering and operating cutting-edge forces that have been operated separately by the Army, Navy, and Air Force as a single command. The new strategic company plans to play the role of a control tower of the Korean three-axis system, such as kill chain, Korean missile defense, and mass punishment and retaliation. Accordingly, the Strategic Military Command will integrate the Air Force's F-35A stealth fighter that can penetrate North Korea's anti-aircraft network and strike a target, the Navy's Aegis ship that detects and intercepts ballistic missiles, and a 3,000-ton submarine equipped with a submarine-launched ballistic missile. Is expected. The Strategic Military Command also plans to command the Hyunmoo series of ballistic cruise missiles operated by the Army's Missile Strategic Command and interceptor missiles operated by the Air Force Missile Defense Command. In addition, reconnaissance satellites, long-range air-to-surface missiles, and tactical surface-to-surface missiles are also core forces that are likely to be operated by the Strategic Military Command. The Minister of National Defense has been doing all he can to establish a Strategic Military Command since he reported on the plan to establish a Strategic Military Command at a meeting of key commanders of the entire Army presided over by President Yoon on July 6. To this end, the Ministry of National Defense formed a task force headed by a colonel level under the Defense Reform Office. The TF plans to begin preparations for the establishment of the unit in 2023 and finish the review of specific forces to be integrated into the Strategic Military Command. The official launch date is scheduled for early 2024. The establishment of a strategy company was a presidential campaign promise of former President Moon Jae-in. However, The Moon Jae-in government abolished this in February 2019. At that time, the Ministry of National Defense presented it based on the research results that it overlapped with the existing military organization and had poor operational efficiency. However, inside and outside the military, it was pointed out that the establishment of the Strategic Military Command was cancelled with the intention of not provoking North Korea in line with the keynote of inter-Korean dialogue. The revival of the stranded Strategic Military Command establishment project is analyzed as a result of reflecting the Yoon Suk-yeol administration's policy toward North Korea to thoroughly respond to North Korean military threats. Samsung Electronics stock price is seldom recovering. Executives have shown their will to boost the stock price by purchasing billions of won worth of their own stock, but to no avail. Executives above the president's level also suffer losses of tens of thousands of won to more than 100 million won per person. Individual investors, who are ants who have jumped into Samsung Electronics because of the confidence of executives, are very angry. As a result of the analysis of the electronic disclosure system on the 14th, from January to June, 6 executives at the president level and above purchased a total of 3.35 billion won worth of Samsung Electronics stocks. With a total of 50,000 shares, the average unit price was 69,467 won. Considering that the stock price of Samsung Electronics closed at 56,800 won on that day, the loss rate is about 18%. The person suffering the biggest loss is Lee Young-bi, president of the Memory Business Division. President Lee Young-bi bought 5,000 shares each in February and April, worth about 700 million won, and is currently suffering a loss of 133.9 million won. DX Division Vice Chairman Han Jong-hee lost 131 million won, MX Division President Roh Tae-moon suffered a loss of 104 million won, Kim Soo-mok, Set Division Head of the Legal Department, lost 127 million won, and Park Hak-jae, Head of Management Support Department, suffered a loss of 78.5 million won. In particular, in May, about 30 executives at the senior level or higher bought Samsung Electronics stocks. At the time, shares of Samsung Electronics were in the low 60,000 won range. Individual investors who accepted the executives' move as a low-price buy signal expected Samsung Electronics stock price to rebound soon and reach 70,000 electronics. In May, the net purchase amount of individual investors was 990 billion won. However, the share price of Samsung Electronics fell below 60,000 won in September. On the 8th, just before the holiday, it touched 55,600 won, breaking new lows for the year. On the 14th, it fell more than 2% from the previous day due to concerns over continued U.S. inflation, and reacted more sensitively than the 1.56% decline in the KOSPI. Prospects for the future are mixed. An analyst at Evest Investment and Securities said, inflation is driving up production costs, and a sharp rise in interest rates is slowing consumption. The prosecution, which is investigating the Jae-Myong Town and Daejeongdong development preferential treatment and lobbying allegations, also called Wang Mu-song, the first president of Songnam Urban Development Corporation, as a witness on the 8th following the 5th and 6th. Following Daejeongdong, the prosecution is expanding its investigation network to the development of Jae-Myong Town, while also intensively looking into the involvement of Democratic Party leader Lee Jae-myung. In the case of the Jae-Myong Town project, the whereabouts of profits generated by Songnam City raising the sale price per 3.3 square meters higher than planned will also be the key to future investigations. According to the legal community on the 14th, the 3rd Division of the Anti-Corruption Investigation of the Seoul Central District Prosecutor's Office summoned former President Wang, who was investigated for 2 consecutive days on the 5th and 6th, to investigate again on the 8th. On the 13th, right after the Chuseok holiday, the prosecution summoned and investigated the vice president of Bukhook Securities, a key investment company in the project financial investment company in charge of the implementation of the Jae-Myong Town. It is interpreted that the investigative powers are being gathered for the Jae-Myong Town project, which is called a trailer of the Daejeongdong Development Irregularity Project because of its similarity in business structure to the Daejeongdong Development Project. The charge that the prosecution first applied to the Jae-Myong project is a charge of leaking business secrets, such as the Songnam Urban Development Corporation changing its public offering guidelines to favor the Marie Asset Consortium. The size of the dividend for the Jae-Myong Town project is considered one of them, both inside and outside the prosecution. The Songnam City Presale Price Council raised the unit price per 3.3 square meters of the Hoban Verdium apartment, which was scheduled to be supplied to the 8th block of Jae-Myong 2, by 1.71 million won from the originally planned 15.2 million won to 16.91 million won. Because it was small. According to the minutes of the 2014 Songnam City Council Administrative Audit Meeting, Songnam City had expected a sales revenue of about 110 billion won, assuming a project cost of 559 billion won and sales revenue of 670 billion won for the A28 block in 2011. However, as the Pre-Sale Price Council raised the unit price by 1.71 million won, about 75 billion won in nominal pre-sale revenue was generated. Even considering the increase in construction costs and land purchase costs from LH, it remains questionable that the total profit dividend is around 30.15 billion won. Even if the total amount of dividends known at the beginning is acknowledged, it is still unknown where the remaining dividends of 15.75 billion won, excluding the share of Songnam City, went. Prosecutors are said to be paying attention to the fact that an excessive amount of commission was paid to the real estate agency during the sale process. Prosecutors say they are paying attention again to the transcript of accountant Geun-Hye, who is called the smoking gun of the Daejang-dong case, while looking into the degree of involvement of the Democratic Party leader, Jae-Myong Lee, who was then mayor of Songnam. Former President Wang said, in the case of the Wire Yi project, Yu Yuhan-ki, former head of the Development Business Division, who passed away because he was being pushed by the deadline for a land contract with LH, said that he handled most of the work. Key stakeholders in the Daejang-dong development project, former Songnam Pottery Planning Division head Dong Jae-dong, lawyer Nam Wook, and accountant Jang Young-hak were also deeply involved in the case, and the spouses of lawyer Nam Wook and accountant Jang Young-hak were also listed as executive directors of affiliated companies of the private sector. Suriname, the South American country behind the Netflix hit drama Suriname, announced that it would consider legal action against a Korean drama producer. According to the website of the Surinamese government, Albert Ramdan, Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation, said on the 13th that, referring to the Korean drama Suriname, we will consider legal action against the production company. Minister Ramdan expressed dissatisfaction with the drama, saying the show was turning Suriname into a country of drugs such as methamphetamine and cocaine. The Surinamese government also said it would protest the South Korean government. Ambassador Ramdan emphasized that freedom of expression should be treated as important, but that it also has limitations. The Korean Ministry of Foreign Affairs is also reported to be monitoring the situation after receiving a report on this local trend through the diplomatic mission. Korea and Suriname established diplomatic ties in 1975, and now the Korean embassy in Venezuela serves as Suriname. When asked if an official protest message from the Surinamese government had been received by the South Korean government, an official from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs said, after the Netflix series aired, the Surinamese government has not expressed a position on the Korean government, he said. The Korean embassy in Venezuela has announced on its website that it will do its best for your safety, saying, Koreans living in Suriname are likely to be troubled by the aftermath of the airing of the drama. The drama Suriname is the plot of a civilian businessman cooperating with the National Intelligence Service's secret operation to arrest a Korean drug lord who has taken over Suriname. In this drama, the Surinamese government is portrayed as a corrupt country that defends crime by colluding with drug lords. On the 14th, writer Jin Young-kwon criticized Democratic Party leader Lee Jae-myung to the passports, saying, do not spend too much of the national capacity on political strife, oppression of the opposition, or eliminating static electricity. Writer Jin appeared on the radio and commented, I'm talking nonsense like this. He said, the Jae-Myong Southern Police Agency was in charge of the investigation, and the police were paying for their meals after receiving taxes, he said. The Anti-Corruption and Economic Crime Investigation Team of the Jae-Myong Nambu Office, which previously investigated the case of suspicion of Songnam FC sponsorship while serving as Songnam Mayor Lee Jae-myung of the Democratic Party, completed the investigation on the 13th and sent the Democratic Party leader Lee Jae-myung to the prosecution with an opinion of indictment. It is known that the police have made a judgment that Lee Jae-myung, the leader of the Democratic Party, is charged with bribing a third party. Writer Jin said, if you are a public official, it is natural to say something like, I will earnestly receive the investigation and clear the charges against me. He continued, I have seen all of this in the case of former Justice Minister Cho, saying, I don't understand why they are doing the same thing again. Writer Jin emphasized that Korea is not a country where the prosecutors, the police, or the courts can do whatever they want, depending on political power. Democratic Party leader Lee Jae-myung said at a meeting of the Supreme Council on the morning of the same day, I told you not to spend too much of the nation's capabilities on political strife, oppression of the opposition, and elimination of political enemies. In addition, the Democratic Party created the Yoon Suk-yeol Regime Political Repression Countermeasures Committee chaired by Rep. Park Byum-jae, who served as the Minister of Justice. Writer Jin Jung-kwon pointed out that the Democratic Party's top member Ko Min-young said that Kim Geun-hye's overseas tour accompany her, saying, we should go together. Writer Jin appeared on the radio and said, whether you like it or not, Kim Geun-hye is the first lady of this country and she has a role to play. Writer Jin said, if you look at it, the spouse of former President Moon Jae-in visited all famous tourist destinations abroad under the guise of diplomacy in the past. She must have spent quite a bit of money there, she asks, what was the purpose of it? She added, there doesn't seem to be a lot of legislators dictating money and holding onto and stocking these trivial things, she added. Earlier, in an interview on radio the day before, Democratic Party top member Ko Min-young expressed her position that Kim should accompany President Yoon to overseas trips. President Yoon Suk-yeol will travel to the UK, USA, and Canada for 7 days and 5 nights starting on the 18th. Ko Min-young, a member of the Democratic Party, said, Does Mrs. Kim have to go together? She said, I hope she doesn't just go. She said that diplomacy must have a purpose. He said, the president's overseas trip consumes quite a lot of budget, he said. He added that the First Lady is not a decoration and there should be something to comfort the compatriots, but the suspicions about Mrs. Kim are so snowballed that her eyes won't just be warm. Thank you for watching today. Please subscribe and set an alarm.